Hello friends, I welcome you all to another edition of Daily News Analysis. So in this particular edition, we are going to take a look at very important articles that are part of Hindu as well as Indian Express newspapers. So the first article that we are going to take a look at is Vice President's recent resignation. Important article particularly from the perspective of GS2, Prelims as well as Mains. Another important article is about United States withdrawing again from UNESCO. Important article, important from the perspective of particularly GS2, important world institutions, global institutions in Mains. From the perspective of prelims particularly, knowing everything about UNESCO is very, very vital. Another important article is about Chinese dam being constructed on Brahmaputra. Now it is being made official. One of the largest hydropower project in the world, and we are going to take a look at what are the India's concerns associated with such dam activity. Another important article is about rubber plantation disease in Kerala, particularly a beetle fungi combo threatening rubber capital, particularly Kerala's rubber plantations. So essentially that particular article is important from the perspective of science and technology environment. So stay tuned for that article. Another important article is about biostimulants in India particularly. So we are going to take a look at holistically what exactly is the biostimulant, how it is different from say plant growth regulator, and what are the regulatory concerns associated with use of such biostimulants. So stay tuned for that particular article, particularly from the perspective of agriculture, prelims as well as mains. So in the decoded section, which is important from the perspective of mains particularly, we are going to take a look at a very, very important article, which is about tracking India's climate goals. So that particular article vital from the perspective of GS3 environment. So stay tuned for that analysis as well. So the first important article that we are going to take a look at is about Vice President's resignation. So in recent times, we have seen Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar submitting his resignation to the President under Article 67A, by the way, citing medical reasons. Union Home Ministry notified the resignation within 24 hours. So essentially the current update about the resignation is that the resignation has been notified, but there is no official date for the announcement of election of new Vice President, by the way, by the Election Commission, and neither is there update regarding that from any ministry or the central government as well. But when it comes to this particular resignation, it is an unprecedented in the recent political history. So Dhankar is the first Vice President in Indian history to resign without contesting for a president or citing clear political progression particularly. So he is per se the first Vice President to resign in such a way. Earlier incidences of VP's resignation is also very, very vital, by the way. So you must know some of the examples of earlier Vice Presidents who resigned from the office under Article 67A by writing to the President. So the first example being V.V. Giri, who in 1969 resigned to contest the presidential election after the death of President Zakir Hussain. Remember some of the examples that I cited here, important particularly from the perspective of prelims. You may get a direct statement on such important historical facts as well. Particularly the second example is of R. Venkatraman, who in 1987 resigned upon being elected as a President of India. Similar is the case with Shankar Dayal Sharma in 1992. He also resigned as the Vice President at that point of time after being elected as a President. Similar is the case with K.R. Narayanan in 1997 as well. When it comes to important example of Bhairav Singh Shekhawat, who in 2007 became the first Vice President to lose a presidential election and he subsequently resigned. So the example of Bhairav Singh Shekhawat is bit different here. Another important fact to know is about Krishan Kant, who died in office on 27 July 2002, becoming the first and only Vice President to die in office. So this particular fact is very, very vital from the perspective of knowing some political history of the office of the Vice President. So position and role particularly, we will briefly go through what is the position and role of the Vice President. Vice President holds the second highest constitutional position in India particularly, ranking just below the President. Steps in to perform the duties of the President when the office becomes vacant due to death, resignation, removal or absence. Functions as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. This is the primary function of the Vice President, by the way, which is akin to the United States Vice President in the Senate. So essentially it is very similar to the US Senate system where US Vice President presides over that particular body. Need for immediate election. So, in recent times, due to this resignation, the vacancy need to be filled immediately. Essentially, the vice president's post cannot be left vacant. With Jagdeep Dhankar's resignation, the election commission must hold the elections immediately now. Functioning during vacancy. What about the state of functioning during the vacancy? Until a new vice president takes charge, the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha will preside over the Rajya Sabha's proceedings. We have seen in recent times deputy chairperson presiding over the Rajya Sabha in recent monsoon session. Even after the expiry of term, the vice president remain in office until the successor assumes charge, but resignation ends that continuity. That's why, you know, the immediate election now are necessary. Electoral college for vice president. This is also very vital point from the perspective of prelims. The vice president is elected by electoral college. What is the electoral college of vice president, by the way? Both elected and nominated members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Similarly, just comment what is the electoral college of president particularly. State legislatures are not involved in this election, and also comment whether state legislator or state legislators are involved in president's election or not. MPs can vote independently as voting is not bound by the party whip. So, this is also very, very vital point from the perspective of prelims, that MPs can vote independently in vice president's election. Particularly, they are not bound by party whip. What is the election procedure, by the way? It is governed by the presidential and vice presidential election rules of 1974. Nomination. Each candidate's form must be signed by at least 20 proposers and 20 seconders. All must be electors. So, there should be at least 20 proposers and 20 seconders must be submitted to the returning officer between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. on the designated days. There is a security deposit of 15,000 rupees as well. By the way, that needs to be changed nowadays. 15,000 rupees seems to be very low. So, there are some elements of electoral reforms in that regard which are necessary. But see, our discussion will revolve around some constitutional aspects of the office of vice president. We are not going to go into the speculative and political reasons for his resignation because the official reason given by him is medical reasons. That is sufficient to know from the perspective of prelims as well as mains for you. Role of returning officer. So, who is actually the returning officer for the election of the vice president? By convention, the Secretary General of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha is appointed as the returning officer on a rotational basis. Remember this particular fact. Even if the vice president particularly is the chairperson of Rajya Sabha, the returning officer for the election of vice president is on a rotational basis. Essentially, there are both Secretary General of Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha are involved. Both two senior officers from the Secretariat act as the assistant returning officers as well. Voting system is also important to know. As per Article 66(1) of the Constitution, election is conducted through proportional representation by single transferable vote. Very vital. Voting is done by secret ballot. There is a secret ballot. Unlike presidential elections, every MP's vote has equal value. 1 vote per MP. So, essentially voters rank candidates in order of reference as well. Preference. To win, a candidate must secure more than 50% of the valid vote plus 1 majority. So, this is the proportional representation by the single transferable vote. Eligibility criteria, obviously you must be knowing he or she must be Indian citizen, at least 35 years old and qualified for Rajya Sabha membership, should not hold office of profit, any office of profit under the government. Term and vacancy, obviously holds office for 5 years but can be re-elected any number of times. Vacancy may arise due to expiry of term, resignation, removal, death or disqualification. What is the removal process for the vice president, by the way? Removed by a resolution passed by a majority of all the then members of Rajya Sabha, effective majority, and agreed to by the Lok Sabha with simple majority. Resolution can only originate in Rajya Sabha within 14 days of prior notice. No formal impeachment procedure is required, which is very different from, say, the removal of the president. So, essentially the office involved for the removal is Rajya Sabha. So, but you can see the difference between the removal process and appointment process of vice president effectively through these points. So, these are some constitutional provisions associated with the vice presidents under article 63 to 71. You can look at 67 specifies a 5-year term for the vice president, and look at also 68 deals with the term completion and filling of vacancies in the office of vice president. These two articles are very important, very vital to remember. Apart from that, article 66 is again vital. Vice president is elected by an electoral college comprising of both members of House of Parliament through proportional representation. So, this particular fact is also very, very vital. So, article 66, 67, 68 important to remember when it comes to office of the vice president. Very, very vital, important from the perspective of prelims particularly. Also, as I earlier mentioned about the political history of resignation of vice presidents is also very, very vital to know. So, these two facts are very, very vital in this particular article. This is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Very important article, by the way. Another important article is about US withdrawing from the UNESCO again. So, what has happened now? The United States has announced it will again pull out of UNESCO. This marks the third US exit from the Paris-based UN agency and second under the Trump administration. The decision will take effect at the end of December 2026. Reasons cited behind the recent exits is also very important to know. US believes that its involvement is not in country's national interest, and it accused UNESCO of promoting anti-Israel bias and speech. It also linked to UNESCO's perceived agenda to advance divisive social and cultural causes. Apart from that, US believes UNESCO's decision to admit the state of Palestine way back in 2011, by the way, as a member state is highly problematic, contrary to US policy, and contributed to the proliferation of anti-Israel rhetoric within the organization of UNESCO. So, essentially, this is for the third time that United States has withdrawn itself from the UNESCO. USA's past exit, particularly US previously left UNESCO in 2017 and in the Trump's first term for similar reasons, rejoining under President Biden in 2023. By the way, US and Israel had stopped funding UNESCO after it admitted Palestine as a member in 2011. An earlier withdrawal happened in 1984, by the way, under President Reagan as well, over concerns of mismanagement and pro-Soviet bias, with re-entry in 2003 under George W. Bush presidency. So, essentially, this is for the third time that UNESCO has seen the US withdrawal. So, let's see what comes out of it. But essentially, knowing everything about UNESCO now is very, very vital. See, UNESCO, United Nations Scientific, Educational, Cultural Organization, promotes global cooperation in education, science, culture, heritage preservation. It oversees the designation of World Heritage Site, supports educational monitoring, for example, GEM reports, assists in disaster preparedness, and promotes cultural diplomacy, heritage protection mechanisms as well. Headquarters obviously is in Paris. The organization has 194 members and 12 associated members. States that are not members of the United Nations may be admitted to UNESCO as well. There is a UNESCO National Commissions, national cooperating bodies set up by the member states to associate their governmental and non-governmental bodies with the work of the organization. So, this is some basics of the UNESCO. You can look at the UNESCO's organizational structure as well. There is a general conference, there is executive board, and there is a secretariat. General conference consists of all the member states, meets every 2 years, and it sets the policies and budget for the UNESCO. Executive board has 58 member states, meet twice a year, review budget use, and secretariat involves director general, and it is involved in the day-to-day operations of the UNESCO. These are three organizational bodies that are part of UNESCO. India and UNESCO. So, knowing the latest about India and UNESCO is very, very vital. India ranks 6th globally and 2nd in Asia Pacific region for the most number of World Heritage Sites. Remember these facts, important from the perspective of prelims. India currently has 44 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So, this number may change in the coming times, but currently India has 44 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. These include 36 cultural sites, 7 natural sites and 1 mixed site. So can you name 1 mixed site mentioned here? Very, very vital. India also has 62 sites in the tentative list of the World Heritage, which is a mandatory threshold for any site to be considered as a World Heritage property of the future. On behalf of the Government of India, Archaeological Survey of India is the nodal agency of all World Heritage related matters in the country. So, what about India's recent entry to World Heritage Site list? Recently, the Maratha military landscapes of India got inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage list, becoming the 44th property to receive this designation. So, Maratha forts, the towering Maratha landscape has been designated as World Heritage Site, particularly Maratha military landscapes of India. The Maratha military landscapes spanning the 17th to 19th century CE comprises a network of 12 strategically designated forts, designed forts by the way, that exemplify the Maratha Empire's military foresight and architectural excellence. So, states covered, obviously these forts are in Maharashtra majorly, but there is one fort which is in Tamil Nadu called Jinji Fort as well. Maharashtra's Salher, Shivneri, Lohgad, Khanderi, Raigad, Rajgad, Pratapgad, Suvarnadurg, Panhala, Vijayadurg, Sindhudurg forts are protection status. 8 forts protected by the Archaeological Survey of India, 4 forts protected by the government of Maharashtra. So, essentially geographic diversity and fort types, we will go through some of these forts essentially now. Hill forts, for example, Salher, Shivneri, Lohgad, Rajgad, Raigad, Jinji. Hill forts, hill forest forts, Pratapgad is a hill forest fort. Hill plateau fort, Panhala is a hill plateau fort. Coastal fort, Vijayadurg is there. Island forts, Khanderi, Suvarnadurg and Sindhudurg is there. Particularly Sindhudurg is a really beautiful sort of fort. You can look at the Sindhudurg fort, which is island fort of the coast of Maharashtra. You can look at Raigad here, Pratapgad here and Suvarnadurg as well. So, very important historic milestone for India now. So, this is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Very, very vital from the perspective of prelims as well as mains. So, the third important article is about Chinese dam activity on Brahmaputra. Again, China breaks the ground on $170 billion dam near Arunachal Pradesh. So, this particular news is very vital. India's concerns are immense in this regard. China has officially begun construction of a massive hydropower project on the Yarlung-Zangbo river upstream of Brahmaputra. Yarlung-Zangbo essentially is the name of Brahmaputra river in China, Chinese Tibetan region, just before it enters the Arunachal Pradesh, raising strategic and environmental concerns for India. Particularly when it comes to this particular dam will become the largest hydropower project once built on the Brahmaputra river. So, essentially it has many strategic implications for India as well. About the project now, its location is in Medong County, Tibet, near Great Bend before entering India. You can see before the Great Bend, the China is building that particular dam. Investment of almost $170 billion, China's biggest infrastructure project after Three Gorges Dam. So, Three Gorges Dam, particularly one of the largest dams on the Yangtze River of China. So, this particular project will be bigger than even Three Gorges Dam. So, there is a massive investment of around $170 billion, capacity of 60 gigawatts, nearly 3 times that of Three Gorges Dam. So, essentially once built, this particular dam now will become the largest hydropower project in the world. Design includes 5 cascade hydropower stations over 50 kilometer stretch of the river that drops 2000 meters, offering vast hydropower potential. So, essentially we currently don't know the capacity, the water holding capacity of the dam. That detail hasn't been released by China. So, essentially, but it is a cascade dam sort of. So, essentially Chinese perspective in this regard is very, very vital. Seen as a major economic stimulus amid domestic slowdown, Chinese stock markets responded positively to a new company, China Yajiang Group Company Limited, created to oversee construction. Particularly the economic stimulus in this regard is very, very vital for Chinese slowing economy. India's concerns are very also vital in this context. Strategic threat, potential for China to use the dam as a water bomb, especially if excess water is suddenly released. So this particular concern has been actually shared by Arunachal Pradesh Chief Minister in recent times. There is also environmental risk associated. Arunachal Pradesh Siang region particularly, you can see the Siang region here, especially vulnerable. Local tribes like Adi may face catastrophic damage. So Adi tribe particularly related to Siang region of Arunachal Pradesh. So due to such dam activity, there is a growing threat to the existence of Adi tribe in Arunachal Pradesh as well. Hydrological impact in this regard is also vital. Only 30% of Brahmaputra's water originates in China, but flow regulation could affect Indian projects. Downstream hydropower projects in Northeast India may suffer disruptions. The Northeast holds nearly half of India's 133 gigawatt hydropower potential, over 80% of which remains untapped. Of the 60 gigawatt estimated potential, about 50 gigawatt lies in Arunachal Pradesh alone. You can imagine the impact of hydropower projects, such large hydropower projects on India's own hydropower project capacity. India's response is also very vital in that regard. Proposed Upper Siang multipurpose project, which is of capacity almost 11.2 gigawatt, a massive storage based dam in the Siang district of Arunachal Pradesh, aimed to act as a strategic buffer to regulate water flow and protect downstream populations and infrastructure. Delays, there are recent delays to the completion of the project now, or even starting the project. Progress is slow due to local opposition and pending investigations. So essentially, this particular Chinese dam activity will have tremendous geostrategic, geopolitical impacts on overall India-China relations. At the same time, with the operationalization of such huge project, there are many strategic, geographic at the same time. Now let's take a look at Brahmaputra river itself. So essentially, it is called Yarlung Zangbo, as I earlier said, in China Tibetan region. It originates in Yangtze Glacier near Mansarovar Lake in Tibet region of China, where it is called Yarlung Zangbo. Course, it flows eastward in Tibet as Yarlung Zangbo, takes a sharp southward turn at the Great Bend near Namcha Barwa, enters India in Arunachal Pradesh as Siang Dihang River, called as Brahmaputra in Assam, enters Bangladesh as Jamuna and later merges with the Ganga Padma, flows into Bay of Bengal via Meghna estuary as well. Length around 2,900 kilometers, one of the longest rivers in the world. Countries India, China, Bangladesh, we already know this. So some of the major tributaries, left bank, right bank tributary, important from the perspective of particularly prelims as well as mains. So we can take a look at the chart here. Right bank tributaries: Siang, Dihang, Subansiri, Kameng, Dibang, Lohit, Rangan, Gadi, Noa Dihing, Tenga, Tuting are right bank tributaries. What are some of the left bank tributaries as well? There is a Manas, Ai, Beki, Panglidia, Puthimari, Dhansiri, Kopili, Kolong, Digaru, Gadadhar and Sankosh rivers. So remember these names, very important from the perspective of prelims to know what are some of the famous right bank as well as left bank tributaries of the Brahmaputra. Very important fact from the perspective of prelims particularly. This is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So another important article is about rubber plantation disease. So essentially this beetle fungi combo is threatening plantations in rubber capital Kerala. So a dangerous symbiotic relationship between ambrosia beetles and fungi is threatening rubber plantations in Kerala. This beetle fungi combo leads to leaf fall, drying of trunks and even tree death, severely affecting latex production. Experts warn that more pathogenic fungi could associated with these beetles, amplifying the threat and call for urgent and coordinated response. So we are seeing the new threat to Kerala's rubber plantations. So what is the nature of this relationship, by the way, association between this beetle particularly and the fungi? How they have formed this symbiotic association? Very important to know from the perspective of environment as well. Beetles bore tunnels in tree barks, carrying and cultivating fungi in them. Fungi feeds on bark and releases enzymes that weaken the wood, helping beetles penetrate further. Beetles and larvae feed on the fungi, not the wood itself. It's a mutualistic farming relationships. So it is a good example of mutualism. So this particular chart here shows some of the other associations of symbiotic relationships. There is a mutualism, both species will benefit. There is a competition, both species will be harmed. So now the thing is, this beetle fungi combination is a symbiotic mutual relationship where both fungi as well as the beetle benefits from it, but it is devastating for the rubber plantations themselves. Essentially, very important to know is about other associations, symbiotic associations as well. There is amensalism. You can look at this. One is harmed while there is no effect on the other species. So one is harmed and no effect on the other species. That is the relationship called amensalism. Parasitism. One is harmed while other is benefiting. That is parasitism. Commensalism you can look at. There is no effect on one species, but the other species benefits. And neutralism, there is no effect on both these species. So these are some of the 5 to 6 symbiotic associations. You can go through the example of each of these associations. You will find it in a day-to-day life, in particularly environmental context. Those examples are very, very vital. Identified fungal species and findings. Particularly, the researchers identified the beetle as a species of Euplatypus parallelis. 2 associated fungi were found, Fusarium ambrosia and Fusarium solani. Remember these names, important to know from the perspective of particularly prelims. This is the first time F. solani has been reported in association with adult ambrosia beetles. So ambrosia beetles are native to Central and South America, first reported in India in cashew trees in Goa way back in 2012. Beetles are attracted to ethanol released by stressed trees, not necessarily dead ones. So essentially, this beetle species is attracted to the ethanol released by the stress in trees. Infection, impact and spread. See, essentially infections result in severe structural and physiological damage to rubber trees. Obviously, these beetles actually go deep in the rubbers, in the rubber itself. The fungus blocks xylem vessels, spreads systematically and causes long-term internal damage as well. Infections become nearly impossible to control, leading to irreversible tree loss as well. Challenges in treatment. So what are the challenges in treating such this particular disease? Fungi resides deep within the plant tissues, making it hard for insecticides or fungicides to reach them. Fusarium species can spread through soil or insect vectors and are known to modify plant microbiomes to their advantage. Potential of wider threat is also cannot be denied. Euplatypus parallelis and similar species are invasive and highly mobile, capable of infecting over 80 species of broadleaf trees like cashew, teak, coconut and coffee. So this particular species is also invasive species of beetle. There is a concern that new pathogenic fungi could team up with beetles, broadening their host's range and making control even harder. Human and ecological risk is also there. Fusarium fungi can also infect humans, especially immunocompromised animals as well as other plant species as well. This poses health risk to plantation workers and threatens the broader ecosystem balance as well. So when it comes to rubber itself, India is 6th in a global rubber production and Kerala produces almost 90% of it. This is important fact here. The infection threatens not only rubber but also other economically valuable crops like coffee, mango and cashew as well. So as I earlier said, this particular type of beetle was first found on cashew trees way back in Goa. See, this is invasive species. So essentially it can affect coffee plantations, mango plantations as well, apart from the beetles. So it will devastate the whole economic or agri-economic system. Top rubber producing countries. This is also very, very vital fact to know. By the way, if India is 6th, what are the other 5 top rubber producing countries? There is a Thailand first at the first place. After that, Indonesia, Vietnam, Ivory Coast, China, India and then Malaysia. You can see the common sort of so the important fact to know with all these countries is essentially the range you can look at where the plantations are found exactly. So this is the major area where the plantations are found, particularly the Southeast Asia. Brazil is one, and you can look at Central African region as well. So you can take a look at this particular map here, important from the perspective of prelims as well as mains. Already in mains particularly, UPSC has asked about the rubber plantations. So this is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So the next important article that we are going to discuss is about biostimulants. So in recent times, we have seen the center amending or ending the provisional registration facility for biostimulants. Manufacturers without full approval can no longer sell their products after June 16, 2025. So essentially what has happened now, the central government has tightened the regulations when it comes to biostimulants. So Union Agriculture Minister urged states to stop retailers from forcing farmers to buy these biostimulants along with, say, DAP or urea. Complaints have emerged about ineffectiveness of some biostimulants, prompting calls for review and potential restrictions of their sales. So there are some of the concerns when it comes to biostimulants. That's why the tighter regulatory control is very, very vital. But before that, what are the biostimulants, by the way? Biostimulants are substances or microorganisms that stimulate plant physiological processes such as nutrient uptake, growth, and stress tolerance. They are made from plant waste, seaweed extract, etc., and are not classified as fertilizers or pesticides under current laws. Remember that. Some of the examples include, as I earlier said, seaweed extracts or fulvic acids, humic acids, protein hydrolysates, etc. See, plant growth regulators are different from biostimulators. They are not biostimulants. Plant growth regulators or plant hormones are organic substances that regulate plant growth and development, either naturally produced or synthetically manufactured. Particularly, there are examples of auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, ethylene, abscisic acid as well. You can look at the difference between the plant growth regulators and biostimulants here. So essentially, the mechanism is different. When it comes to plant growth regulators, they influence the growth directly, while biostimulants, they indirectly stimulate plant metabolism. You can look at the examples as well, and the effect also is different. Sort of PGRs, plant growth regulators, modify growth by altering hormonal pathways, while biostimulants improve stress tolerance and soil health as well. Particularly, why this particular news is vital now? Because the market is growing. India's biostimulant market is valued at $355 million in 2024 and projected to reach $1.13 billion by 2032. So the growth will be tremendous. However, the unregulated spread of nearly 30,000 products earlier led the government to tighten norms, reducing the number around 650 approved products now. So the tightening of this particular market or this particular biostimulant market is underway now, because many times more than 30,000 products without any scientific basis or without any field trials have been provided to the farmers, in a way duping them. So essentially now the tighter regulatory angle is very, very vital. Initially, biostimulants weren't covered under the fertilizer or insecticide laws, allowing them to be sold freely, but a High Court ruling in 2011 allowed state scrutiny for such products. This triggered the center to take regulatory steps. In 2021, Fertilizer Control Order was amended to formally include biostimulants, regulating their sale, manufacture and import. Key provisions of FCO, Fertilizer Control Order, in this regard is also very, very vital. It specifies 8 categories of biostimulants like botanical extracts, vitamins, antioxidants, etc. Manufacturers must submit detailed product data, including toxicity and bioefficacy trials. The FCO mandates 5 toxicity and 4 ecotoxicity tests covering animals like rats, rabbits, birds, fish, bees, etc. No biostimulant can exceed 0.01 ppm of pesticide content. Agronomic bioefficiency trials must be conducted across 3 agroecological zones. under ICR or state university rules. Central Biostimulant Committee was formed in 2021. The committee advises on inclusion of new biostimulants, specification standards, testing and sampling methods, and laboratory requirements. So, these are some of the provisions in the FCO, particularly Fertilizer Control Order. So, there are some provisions for the regulation, as we have just seen about the biostimulants, but the latest government action in this regard is also very vital. As per the 2021 amendment to the FCO, biostimulant manufacturers could apply for provisional registration and sell products for 2 years. The Agriculture Ministry extended this deadline multiple times. On March 17, 2025, the ministry granted a final 3-month extension. So, the extension they are granting since 2021, by the way. After the expiry of the extension, companies holding only provisional certificates can no longer sell their biostimulant products in the market now. So, essentially the unregulated growth of biostimulant market will now be regulated with much more tighter control and with much more scientific scrutiny of such products at the same time, so that our farmers do not get duped in this regard. Very important article, very vital as well. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So, in the decoded section, that is important from the perspective of mains, we are going to take a look at very vital article titled Tracking India's Climate Goals. You can utilize some of the data points effectively in your answers from this particular article. India has recently achieved its target of 50% non-fossil fuel share in installed electricity capacity. That is very widening news. Why? India as a key stakeholder in global climate governance made ambitious commitments under its 2015 Paris Agreement to address climate change. Remarkably, India has made substantial progress, even surpassing some of the targets ahead of schedule, that is 2030. So, what are the India's climate commitments? By the way, climate targets under 2015, we have actually listed some of the NDCs, nationally determined contributions, by the way, under Paris Agreement of 2015, outlining 3 major climate targets to be achieved by 2030. By the way, emissions intensity reduction, reduce the emissions intensity of GDP by 33 to 35% from 2005 levels by 2030. That is one of the NDC. Another is non-fossil fuel electricity capacity, achieve 40% of cumulative installed electric power capacity and non-fossil fuel based sources by 2030. That is, see, these are the 3 NDCs under 2015 agreement, but there is a revision, enhanced commitments under post Paris Panchamrit COP26 goals as well. So, now India is following the Panchamrit NDCs, particularly nationally determined contributions. So, India has gone beyond these NDCs now, which are determined under the Paris Agreement. Now, we have the Panchamrit under COP21, particularly COP26 of 2021. Enhanced commitments under this particular Panchamrit strategy is also important to know. India updated its target at COP26 in Glasgow in 2021, known as Panchamrit commitments. So, what are these Panchamrit commitments? The first one is reach 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel energy capacity by 2030. First one, 50% of its energy requirement from renewables energy by 2030. That is second. Reduction of total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons from now to 2030. That is third one. Reduction in the carbon intensity of the economy by 45% now over 2005 levels. You can see there is under 2015 commitment, this particular commitment is 33 to 35%. Now, under Panchamrit, Panchpran, we have increased that to 45 by 2030. Achieving the target of net zero by 2070. So, this is the major goal that was added in that particular summit of COP26 in Glasgow, achieving net zero by 2070. See, these are our Panchamrit 5 commitments. So, when it comes to some of the achievements now, what is the status? So, the data in this regard is very vital. Just remember or note down some of the data points now. Achievements on climate targets is tremendous. 50% non-fossil fuel share in installed electricity capacity has been already achieved. India has achieved the target in 2025, 5 years ahead of schedule. Current capacity, very important to know, as of June 2025, total installed electricity capacity is around 485 gigawatt. Non-fossil sources, which includes large hydro, nuclear, solar, wind. Remember that large hydro has been reclassified under the renewable energy now, which non-fossil fuel now actually comes out to be 243 gigawatt. So, almost 50% of the total installed electricity capacity. You can see the growth here. Effectively, key drivers. What are the key drivers of this growth? By the way, rapid growth in renewable energy in the last couple of years, particularly in solar energy. For example, in 2024, India added nearly 30 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity, the highest ever in a single year, with solar energy contributing approximately 24 gigawatt of this total. So, we have seen in 2024 particularly the tremendous growth in renewable energy capacity led by solar, with 24 gigawatt being added in 1 year. Very, very high growth. Creation of carbon sink of almost 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent, likely achieved. This particular target has already been achieved, by the way, likely achieved. About 2.29 billion tons of additional sink had already been created by 2021. India's carbon stock had grown by about 150 million tons of CO2 equivalent every year on average between 2017 and 2021, which is according to ISFR report, India State of Forest report. The next edition of ISFR will have updated data till 2023, but as of 2021, we have achieved almost 2.29 billion tons equivalent. So, in the upcoming ISFR update, we will achieve this particular target of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent being created. So, if the trend continues and another 300 million tons of CO2 equivalent of sink is added between 21 and 23, the forestry target would have also been achieved well ahead of 2030 deadline. Very, very heartening news. Reduction in emission intensity of GDP by 45% from 2005 levels. What about this particular target? On track. So, we are on track to achieve this particular emission intensity target. There is less information on the progress being made on the emissions intensity target, by the way. By 2020, India had already reduced it by 36% from 2005 levels. Considering India's progress so far of achieving almost 36% of the target, the 45% reduction goal by 2030 is likely to be achieved comfortably as well. So, we are on track to achieve these three major goals by 2030 in this regard. What are the other achievements which will bolster India's climate commitments? Growth in India's nuclear power sector. So, what is the data in this regard? Nuclear power capacity has grown by over 70% in last decade, from 4780 megawatt to 8180 megawatt as of 24. It is projected to rise further to 22,480 megawatt by 2031-32. Annual electricity generation from nuclear sources increased from 34 to 8 million units in 2013-14 to almost 48,000 million units in 2023 and 24. So, these are some of the great achievements achieved by India's nuclear power sector as well. But what are some of the challenges being faced by India? By the way, this particular part hasn't been discussed in the said article. I have added this extra for your own reference. There is a gap between installed capacity and actual generation. Although 50% electricity capacity is from non-fossil sources, only 28% of actual electricity generated as of May 25 is from these sources. So, essentially, even if the installed capacity is around 50%, but around only 28% of actual electricity generated by renewable sources. What are the reasons? By the way, intermittent natures of solar and wind energy. We know the traditional reasons: lack of adequate energy storage and grid balancing infrastructure, high dependence on coal and gas for reliable power are some of the reasons. limited share of electricity in total energy use. Electricity forms about 22% of India's total energy consumption, and non-fossil fuel sources account for about 28% of electricity generation. This means clean energy from non-fossil fuel sources account for just about 6% of India's total energy consumption. It is still less, very less. Forestry and land use pressure, by the way. While India may have met its carbon sink target, maintaining and increasing forest cover faces challenges. Deforestation, encroachments, and difficulty in ensuring quality and biodiversity of new plantations is also a challenge. Dependence on global finance and technology. India's climate ambition is conditional on access to international climate finance and technology transfer under the Paris Agreement. So far, developed countries have fallen short on both the terms. $100 billion annual climate finance target hasn't been met even once. Patents and take sharing bottlenecks are persisting. So there are some of the challenges, but the NDC is particularly on track for the achievement by 2030 as well. In conclusion, we can say that the international climate architecture governed by UNFCCC and its Paris Agreement allows countries to set their climate targets. Very true. Not surprisingly, most countries have set modest targets for themselves, but even then many developed countries have struggled to deliver on their promise, not just on emission reductions, but also on climate finance as well. India has said that it can do much more if it gets international finance and technology that is entitled to under the provision of Paris Agreement. So India can do much more if the commitment is fulfilled by developed countries under the Paris Agreement as well. So, but India is on track to achieve its own NDCs, which are set under the Panchamrit goal in COP26 as well by 2030. So, essentially this is the practice question for you, very important from the perspective of GS3 environment. That's it from my side, and stay tuned for another edition of Daily News Analysis. Thank you.